Welcome to Macon, Georgia. Preservation Travels with Lane and Kevin here at our Restoration Nation. We've driven 10 hours to bring you one of the finest examples of Victorian Italian Renaissance architecture in the United States. And we are so happy to be doing this along with our partners in preservation, our allies and friends, the Georgia Trust for Historic Preservation. We want to give special thanks to our friends Mark McDonald, Ben Sutton, and today's tour guide, Ennis Willis, for giving us this behind-the-scenes private tour of the beautiful Hay House. So, come on in and join us.
Welcome to the Hay House. I'm Ennis Willis. I'm the director of the house. I've been in this position for about 2.5 years. Macon was very fortunate because Sherman never made it to this side of the river. He was concentrating on the state capital, Milledgeville, state capital at that time, which is just north of here on the other side of the Ocmulgee. That means that Macon has an extraordinary trove of historic structures. And we're very fortunate to have that. And the grandest of those is the Hay House. It's called the Hay House because the Hay family deeded the house and all its contents to the trust in 1977. The house was built between 1855 and 1859 by a gentleman named William Butler Johnston and his wife Anne Tracy Johnston. How did this house come to be, this incredible 18,000 square foot, 7-story Italian Renaissance mansion in Macon, Georgia? William Butler Johnston was born in 1809 in the small town of Eatonton, about 45 minutes north of Macon, 45 miles. He, by the age of 16, had secured an apprenticeship in New York City, where he went and spent about 7 years learning the new art of watchmaking. In about 1825, he returned to Macon and he and his brother set up the jewelry store. Mr. Johnston quickly became known as the finest watchmaker between New Orleans and Charleston. Those were then the centers of Southern culture and civilization. So people flocked here to buy his wonderful timepieces.
You can see Mr. Johnston's initials here, WBJ. So this was his creation. And this is one of the primary reasons he became rich, and then when investing his money, he became extremely wealthy.
Anyway, he became very wealthy, one of the wealthiest men in the South by the time of the Civil War. At his retirement at age 40, he was wealthy and he was still single. A year later, he married Anne Tracy. She was 20 years his junior. They got married in a big ceremony down here at Christ Episcopal Church. And very shortly thereafter, they embarked on a 3.5-year honeymoon in Europe. On that tour, they saw many things, of course, and were influenced by lots of things. And they bought many things that we still have, some of which we still have in the house, that are our treasures. And they bought those in anticipation of returning to Macon and building a fine house. So here we are. On their return to New York, Mr. Johnston quickly engaged the architectural firm of T. Thomas and Son. He was at that time, he was one of the most celebrated architects in New York City and was building fine houses in Boston, New York, Philadelphia, Baltimore primarily. This was his first big house in the South. The Johnstons lived here through the war. Mr. Johnston died in 1888. Mrs. Johnston died in 1896. And in 1896, the Johnston period in the house came to a close. The house was inherited by their younger daughter, Mary Ellen. She married a gentleman named William Felton. He was at the time of the marriage, he was the youngest Superior Court judge in Georgia history at age 25. And she and Judge Felton lived here until their deaths. Both of them died in 1926. So that was the end of the Felton period. During their time here, they made many improvements and changes to the house, and I'll show you those. So, 1926, the Feltons had one son, William Felton Jr., and he didn't want to take on the house himself, so they sold the house for just over $60,000 to P.L. Hay. Mr. Hay was a wealthy, also a self-made, very wealthy businessman who founded Bankers Health and Life Insurance. And he and his wife, Maud, moved in early 1927. They lived here until Mr. Hay died in 1956, and Mrs. Hay died in 1962. I'm telling you that about the three families because we will take you through the house and show you the house as it looked in various periods. I'll jump from family to family as we go through the rooms because we've staged them and interpreted them to showcase the lives of all three families during their tenure here. It makes us very different from most museums because we go through the entire life of the house. I'm about to take you into the Walnut Hall. Before we get into the room, I want you to take note of the size of this door, 6 inches thick. It is painted to look like walnut. The only real walnut in the Walnut Hall is this work of art and the stair rail. You'll note on the walls 2 great big caribou that were Judge Felton's trophies from a hunting trip to Canada. Note, this is the real gem of the house, in my opinion, of the interior, is this remarkable trompe-l'oeil painting to make the walls look like marble. Interestingly, this was the original treatment. In 1912, Mary Ellen Felton put varnish on these walls over it. It had gotten so dirty from cigar and coal smoke. So she put a coat of varnish on and then painted it. And she painted it a couple of times, and Mrs. Hay came in and she painted it maybe another couple of times. So there were 5 layers over this incredible work of art. And nobody at the time the trust took ownership of the house knew this was here. So when restoration of this area started, this was the first area to be restored, the conservators came in and they discovered this underneath those coats of paint and varnish. The varnish had actually protected it all through the years. So they were able to take all of that off, and 95% of what you see here and in the marble hall where we'll go in just a minute is original. Only about 5–7% had to be replaced. This is the door we just came through from the Walnut Hall. This looks like a door, but it's not. It was placed here by the architects because symmetry is a signature of Italian Renaissance architecture. And in order to keep the symmetry throughout the house, he concocted this architectural trick. Notice that the incredible trompe-l'oeil continues through this room. The artist for the trompe-l'oeil is a young man named Auguste Tripot. He was a Swiss gentleman who was brought in by T. Thomas, the architect, to do this incredible artwork. the incredible plaster trim and the gilt on the ceiling. Money was no object when they were decorating this house. The marble here is the only marble in the room. So this is the original skeleton key that opens the door. This is the original silver plate hardware, including these great hinges. One of the things I love the most about this is the way it's hung. So watch how it glides when I pull it open. The doors hang on their original hinges. These doors are heart pine. They're painted to look like bronze. They each weigh, we are told, although I don't know who weighed them, we're told that they weigh about 500 pounds each. Notice here at the entrance from the walnut hall into the dining room, we have these amazing curved pocket doors. 10 sets of pocket doors around the house, 2 sets of curved ones. The East Lake table and chairs here were Johnston purchases in the 1880s. They've been here ever since. They were here through the Felton period, and then when the Hayes bought the house in 1926, they purchased the table and chairs. So they've basically never left this room since the 1880s. The light fixture here is the original gasolier. beautiful porcelains that came from Paris in 1853. Notice the incredible woodwork done by a New York cabinet maker when the house was being built. The design of the ceiling was obscured when the trust took the house by years and years of coal and cigar smoke. In 1912, Mary Ellen Felton placed new display cabinets in the dining room. This is where the display cabinet stood, in these two corners. When that cabinet was removed from the corner, this original piece of flooring was found. You note the corner of the cabinet. It had been covered by a great big floral carpet and that's what we were intending to put in this room during restoration. But this was discovered, and it is painted sailcloth. And a company in Oregon was located that replicated it. This room is generally almost all completed, restored to look like it did in the Johnston period, with one major exception. We have a beautiful stained glass window on the side of the dining room here that was installed by the Feltons. It's called the Four Seasons of the Vineyard, and when you take a look at it, you can see why. So now I'm going to take you from the Johnston era dining room to the Johnston era green parlor. We're now in the green parlor, the gentleman's parlor, the den. It has served several purposes during its tenure. It's restored to the Johnston period. This is a Johnston sofa purchased in the 1880s. The porcelains on the Sienna marble mantel there are from the Parisian trip. The fireplace in this room is Sienna marble. It's the only Sienna marble fireplace in the house. All the others are Italian Carrara marble. All of this is Italian marble. The great portrait of William Butler Johnston over the mantel. Here is the portrait of Anne Tracy Johnston. Note she's in mourning. She lost 4 pregnancies. Her 2 brothers, who she dearly loved, were both killed in the Civil War. So she spent much of her life in mourning garb. I'm going to take you back down the marble hall, or back up the marble hall, into the reception room, which is displayed as it looked in the Hay period. When the Hay family deeded the house to the Georgia Trust in 1977, it came with all its belongings, all that remained in the house. You see here the French-style furniture. Mrs. Hay was a Francophile, and so we're very lucky to have her French-style furniture and porcelains. portrait of Mr. Hay, P.L. Hay, who made his fortune at Bankers Life and Health Insurance, is over the mantel, and the portrait of Mrs. Hay is here. When the trust took over, they discovered the original wall finish from the Johnston era on this wall. Note again, beautiful pocket doors. Painted on this side to look like mahogany, painted on the other side to look like oak. This massive room we call the double parlor because of its two fireplaces and its size. The chandeliers in the room were bought by Mrs. Hay. This is a Hay room. Again, her French style furniture and porcelains are throughout the room. She added the chandeliers in 1929. We have one object here that is of some value, and that is this, some great value, and that is this painting by Angelica Kauffman. Angelica Kauffman was one of the first women to be celebrated as an artist in Europe in the mid-1800s. The Hays used this as their living room, obviously. And the Johnstons and the Feltons had used it as their ballroom. They were great entertainers, well, all three families actually. So this room was used for dancing. The alcove is where the band would play. Really wonderful thing I need to tell you about this room that goes back to the Johnston era. This house was finished in 1859. We were approaching the Civil War. Tensions were high. Mr. Johnston, having spent a lot of his young life in New York, was not in favor of secession. He, in fact, was pretty loud about it. In 1859, when the Johnstons would have first invited guests into this house, Mr. Johnston showed his political leanings by placing the Union crest over the arch in the double parlor. We're leaving the Hay living room and moving into what we call now the music room. This room at the moment it has features from all three families. The chandeliers were added by Mrs. Hay in 1929. The chandeliers are both baccarat. Note from the spots where the chandeliers hang, the clerestory windows. They open from the outside. So young servant could go onto the roof and open those windows and the hot air starts to move up. The fireplace here, again, Italian marble. This room, the music room, was used by the Johnstons and later the Feltons as an art gallery. You can see many of the treasures they brought from Europe, and this room was designed to display those treasures. I'm moving now into Ruth's room. This statue, which is of a biblical character, Ruth, it's called Ruth Gleaning, was commissioned by the Johnstons on their Grand Tour honeymoon. It was done by an American expat who was working in Italy. The statue came to the house in 1859. Remember, they had commissioned it in 1854. So the room was designed by T. Thomas, the architect, to house this statue, which he had never seen. It has just recently been fully restored. The room is the first documented room to be designed by the architect with the purpose of housing a singular work of art. Notice how the light comes from the right and catches her profile perfectly. Ruth was moved from this room to the music room in 1912 by Mary Ellen Felton. Mary Ellen was a great collector of silver, and she turned this room into a silver closet. And she moved Ruth out to this point in the music room. That area was just restored a couple of years ago, and last year we moved Ruth back into her rightful place in the house after the restoration. She had stood here for 90 years, and we talked about how we were going to replace the wood here. We've patched it with some of the spare original hardwood flooring that Mary Ellen Felton installed in 1912. Here, one last feature I want to show you in the music room are these incredible curved shutters that actually go back into the wall. Notice again the double doors. I told you earlier about that, what looks like a door in the marble hall, that's not a door. It houses this great door, as you can see as we move through. So this is where that door goes when it's open. It's in there now. Now I'm going to take you up to the bedroom floor. Halfway up the staircase is the beautiful Lord Byron painted window. Mrs. Johnston was a highly educated young woman for the mid-1800s. She loved to read poetry. The poetry of Lord Byron was wildly popular, especially in Europe. In 2017, we had a freak windstorm in Macon, and much of the window blew out. The house that day was full of visitors, and luckily, by the grace of God, nobody was hurt. When the shards came out and landed on the stairs in both directions and on the floor of the Walnut Hall, even the guests who were in the house participated in picking up those shards. You can see in the window some broken panes that were used in the restoration of the window, the conservation and restoration of the window. Using original materials, conservation, adding new materials, restoration. Here at the mid-level of the stairs, we have an interesting architectural feature of the house. This is called the hidden room. So these two great porcelains bought by Mrs. Johnston have been here since the house was built, even after the painting of the rooms was done. It's actually a linen closet. I'm now on the third level of the house, which is the bedroom floor. When Mary Ellen Felton and Judge Felton did their great alterations to the house in 1912, they put their hardwood floor on this area, and they built in three really beautiful cabinets here that had beveled mirrors. The Restoration Committee struggled a bit with which period to use in this room. But when the ship robes or the cabinets were removed, this original flooring was discovered. This is the original base paint on the floor. And so Chris Mills repainted the whole hallway in that pattern. Note how plain the walls are, and there's no gilding on the trim. When Chris came to start his restoration, he started chipping away at the paint. These are the three base paint levels that Chris found when he chipped away all the layers of paint that the Feltons and the Hayes had used in this room. He found this all throughout the hallway. So these three shades were everywhere, and he's repainted them as they would have looked in 1860 when the Johnstons moved in. The house had three original bathrooms. Remember, it had hot and cold running water. So 3 indoor bathrooms. This is the original bathroom that served the master area. Now we're in the hay bedroom, the master bedroom. It is, of course, done to the hay period. One of the few requirements of the Hay family when they deeded the house to the trust in 1977 was that this room be kept as their parents had lived here. So it's fully a hay room with many of their things. This is one of my favorite things in the hay bedroom. This is a 1948 Mathis cooler. We found this fan since I've been here and we're able to get it going again. So let me show you. It puts out a massive airflow. I'm taking you now from the hay bedroom into the northeast bedroom chamber that we now call Mary Ellen's room. We took this room back to the Felton period. This we call Mary Ellen's room because she spent most of her life in this room. The beautiful bed and dresser in this room were gifts to the house by a local gentleman who, a mortgage broker. They belonged to his mother, and his wife despised them. So several years ago, he gifted them to the Hay house, the bed and the dresser. We're very happy to have them. Notice over the bed, that little Dutch scene. When they started chipping away at paint here, they discovered the Dutch scene was throughout the upper level of the wall above the railing, and that was installed by Mary Ellen when she redid this room in 1912. Here is a bathroom that the Feltons added in 1912. There's a bathroom that was added here, and there's a bathroom that was added on the other side of the hall in that bedroom. They each featured this sink that was outside the bathroom. Mrs. Hay had put a great big chifforobe here, and when the decision was made to take this back to the Johnston era, that chifforobe had to be removed, and we placed the original sink here. The original sink that was removed by the Hays when they moved in was still in the house, so we were able to reinstall it here in Mary Ellen's room. I've taken you across the hall and we're coming into the unrestored areas of the house. This bedroom, which is a twin of Mary Ellen's room, remains unrestored. Again, this was the Felton sink. This one was never removed, so this is how it's looked since 1912. We're moving now into the children's room. For much of the life of the house, this served as the bedroom for the children of the house. We're going to move from this room to the nanny's room up these stairs. We call this the nanny's room. It may have served as a sewing room at some point for the ladies of the house, but we do know that Laura Johnson, this was her bedroom. Laura Johnson, the nanny for the Felton children. This is one of my favorite rooms in the house, if not my favorite, just because of this incredible window, and the view to the outside is almost certainly unchanged since the early part of the 1900s. We are currently in our gift shop, which was originally the scullery. This was the work area. We're in the basement, the lowest level of the house. This was where food was washed and prepared. And then we have in here the original kitchen of the house. Very unusual at the time to have an indoor kitchen. We have the original floors here, and let me show you. We have the original kitchen tables here. These were placed in the house in 1859, and they are immensely heavy. Another interesting point in the kitchen is that we've restored it and painted the walls in beautiful trompe l'oeil. The basement served as the service part of the house and summer living quarters. If any of you have ever been in Macon in the summer, it can be brutal. So when the first two families especially were here, they lived in these basement rooms. We are in what was used as the summer living room when the families were here. And we use it now as a display area to show things from all three families. I told you about the technological advances the house had. One of those was the ventilation system. So let me show you how it works. This is early air conditioning. So we lower the panel and the grate becomes part of the, for the time, very sophisticated ventilation system that brings air in from the lower floor and it swoops up through the cupola. Behind this great door is the wind tunnel that is also served as the service entrance. So behind the wind tunnel is the wine cellar. The wine cellar would have been the coolest spot in the house, so it was used for wine storage and for food storage for perishables, as well as to start little plants, little bedding plants for the exterior garden. We moved from the central display hall, the central hall on the ground floor, to the larder. You notice in here, nothing touches the ground. So vermin and mice could not get to the food. Everything is above the floor. That seems simple today, but at the time it was a great innovation. Food was becoming scarce at about the time of the Civil War when they moved into the house, so burglar bars were placed on these windows. These are the only windows in the house where that is the case because food was so valuable. Only Mrs. Johnston had a key to this room. Sometimes I suppose she gave it to her head housekeeper or cook. Over here, we're going to go into what was the summer dining room, where we have panels again that tell the history of the house. Over the fireplace is a portrait of Judge William Felton. Remember, Hay, Felton, Johnston. So this was used as the summer dining room. There was a bedroom down the hall here that served as the summer bedroom. It is now our offices. If you'd like to visit the Hay House, we're open for tours. We'd love to have you. We're open for tours daily, from Wednesday through Sunday, closed on Monday and Tuesday. We do tours on the hour. Please visit our website, Hay House, that's Hayhouse, Macon.org.